Earlier this summer, Alec Torelli took second place in the World Series of Poker's $10,000 buy-in Heads Up event. We caught up with him shortly thereafter. We talked about his journey through the event, and we picked his brain for Heads Up Poker strategies. So tell me a little bit about the tournament. Your first match was with Chad Brown, right?
Yeah, it was on Friday, and I didn't really know too much what to expect. I knew him from seeing him on TV and stuff, and I didn't see my matchup until I got there, so I didn't really have time to ask anyone about it before, and so I didn't know what to expect. And
so how'd the match go? Was it pretty smooth for you?
Yeah. I was a little aggressive in the beginning, and it caused him to play more passively and allowed me to pick up some spots. And I made some hands early. I don't remember exactly how I beat him, but I remember I made a few big hands and went well for me.
And so who was your next match after that?
A guy named Chris. He was a live tournament player, and he had a lot of big scores, and that went well too. So
going into this tournament, let's backtrack a little bit. Were you really confident in your heads-up game?
Yeah.
You play a lot online?
Yeah.
How many hours would you say of heads-up poker you put in every week?
Gosh, I don't know. Every week, 40.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. Like more than regular poker, and so I work at it a lot, and I talk with a lot of people that I think are really good, and so it helps my game a lot as well. So I was really confident about this event. It's one event I really wanted to win because it's kind of prestigious, and so I was looking forward to it.
So what aspects of your game do you think are most helpful to you when you're playing heads up?
It's a good question. Well, I think just studying a lot and understanding position is really important. I think that's the most important thing, really, and understanding to play hands in position a lot, and also to adjust faster than your opponents. I think that really helped me a lot in the second match versus Kenny in the finals. The first match, he just ran over me. In the second match, I kind of figured out what I was doing wrong and adjusted. And it just comes down to doing that faster than your opponents and being able to pick up what they're doing and betting patterns and stuff like that and adjusting to that. And
so are betting patterns really important when you're playing heads up more so than in a ring game?
Yeah, by far. Because you're in every pot and they're in every pot, or you're going to be in half of them at least. You have to understand, hand values change drastically.
Of course, starting hand
exactly. And pairs on the flop are a lot bigger. If a second pair is a really big hand, oftentimes. So you got to understand what your opponents are going to be doing. If they're going to be betting marginal hands for value, that's a huge thing to understand. Because if they're not, then they're only going to either have bluffs or really strong made hands.
Okay.
And the combinations of bluffs are way more frequent. So then you could understand when they're bluffing more. And so just understanding these tactics between different players is crucial to playing heads up and also, position and adjusting. So there's a lot of factors, and spent a lot of time doing it, and it paid off for me in this event.
Right. Well, you had a couple other hard matchups after the first two. Did you not? You faced JC Tran?
Yeah, JC Tran was tough. He was not going to let me run him over at all, and I expected that going in. No, not at all. I expected that to be my toughest match out of the first three. And he was calling me on a lot of flops. He was defending a lot of blinds, and he was raising a lot of buttons, and he made it really tough for me. I gotten a few good spots for him. I called off a few of his bluffs. I made a few bad bluffs early, but I think in that match it just came down to me adjusting faster than him at the end. And I picked up that he was going to call me on a lot of bluffs, so I started value betting on my hands and not bluffing, and he still paid me off, and I won a few big pots late.
What factors go into you picking off a bluff?
The main thing is just what hands your opponent's going to bet for value, and if he's not going to bet any hands for value, then he's just going to be bluffing or have a very strong made hand.
Okay.
And heads up, it's just not that likely they're going to have a big pair that often or a set. So you gotta call sometimes. I picked up a good read on him, and that was it.
Worked out.
Yeah, my fourth match I think was by far the toughest.
And your fourth match was Lyle Berman?
No, that was my fifth or sixth.
Okay.
My sixth match. My fourth was a guy named Flawless Victory Online.
Oh,
he's a young online
Roberts?
kid. I forgot his real name, but I think that's right.
I think it might be Roberts.
I think you're right. I think Brian Roberts, maybe.
Yeah.
He was really, really tough. I got in a big spot versus him, and he tanked for 10 minutes and made a big call on me. He thought I was bluffing. That was my toughest match by far, and I got lucky to beat him at the end too.
That works.
Yeah, I think that match was going to be the one that I thought I was going to lose, and once I got past that, I was pretty confident, and I thought I was going to take it down or at least get to the top two. So
right. So right after that, you played Scott Montgomery. You beat him, and then
10 minutes. I got in a big spot versus him, and we got it all in, and I had a huge draw, and he had a pair, and
And then you went up against Lyle Berman.
That was 5 hours, huh?
Yeah.
Gosh. And he played David Williams for 5 hours before that, too. I don't know if you knew the story.
No, I didn't know that. What was it about his game that made the matches take so long?
He just never raised. He would just limp every button, and then he would just...
Would he call? Would he call raises?
Yeah, he'd call some, but like he would only want to play big pots with big hands. So I couldn't try to bet marginal hands against him because he was only going to call with better hands. So you had to wait for spots, and I had to wait for the blinds to get bigger and hope he just made some mistakes in the end when the blinds were big and they would cost him. And
what adjustments did you have to make playing against a player like that?
I mean, a lot. In the beginning, I was playing. I thought he would be trying to make some big calls on me, and I thought he'd be tired from playing 5 hours with David.
Right.
And I definitely underestimated him. I mean, he was right there with me the whole time. He played 10 hours straight, no problem. And it was like 4 a.m, and he was, and he was older. I thought he was going to be tired, and it was just no problem for him. So.
But you got him eventually.
Yeah, I did. We got in a few races. I lost a few, and I was pretty tilted from that. And then he tied me down like 4-1, and I started limping the button a lot because I knew he was just going to check, and I could pick up a lot of small pots. Yeah. I didn't want to risk my whole stack either because I was really short. I didn't want to get it all in and gamble with him. Only when I was ahead, And so I just picked up a lot of small pots. I chipped away to even, and I got in another situation, and I beat him. So.
That works. And so then you faced Vanessa in the semifinals. What did you think of her game?
I didn't know. I knew she was going to be tough going in.
She just won a bracelet.
Yeah, exactly. And I knew she played regularly online, and she
came in third in the event last year.
Yeah, and I knew she was going to be really tough. I knew she was going to be really aggressive as well, and we were both going to play a really aggressive game and not let each other seal any pots. So early on, I knew the match was going to end quickly because we were re-raising each other pre-flop. We were betting a lot of flops, raising a lot of flops. And, I re-raised her once, and she called, and she hit a pair on the turn. I tried to bluff her off it, and I had a big draw, and I got there. So. Yeah,
well, there was another big hand that you played against her. You called her down with a pair of 9s, and the board, I know there was an ace.
Oh, yeah, that hand I think was the turning point in the match, actually.
Right, it looked like it.
Because...
How'd you make the call?
Well, she limped on the button, which she'd been doing occasionally, and I raised out of the blind. And I thought she was getting frustrated with me raising because she thought I was just trying to pick up on her weak limps.
Of course, yeah.
So she re-raised me, and I thought about, we were really deep. We had it was early on, we were really deep, and so I didn't want to re-raise her with 9s and get it all in. I thought about it, but I didn't really want to flip for the tournament at that point. I thought I could...
in the semifinals.
Right, I thought I could have some spots later that I could take advantage of against her, so I just decided to call. Flop came... Shoot. Jack 6.
Jack 6?
Yeah. I checked. She bet. Again, it was the same spot as pre-flop. I thought about check raising and hoping she'd bluff me off all in. I decided to call, and I figured she could have a small pair, maybe like marginal cards like 8-9 pre-flop or 7-8, something like that, a total bluff. And if she's bluffing, I wanted to just let her give a chance to bluff at it again, The turn came an ace, which I thought was, a lot of people would think it was a bad card because, it's a scare card for me. And I was actually kind of excited about it because I never thought she would limp and re-raise me pre-flop with a big ace. So I thought she would take a chance to bluff at it again. And it's a good card for her because she knows I don't have an ace, so she could try to bluff me off it. So I checked, she bet, and I decided to just call and hope she would bluff the river. And she didn't, but I was going to snap her off on the river if she went all in, but she checked. And you could see the frustration with her that hand, and I thought that was a real turning point for me in the match.
So what was going through your mind when you found out you'd be facing Kenny Tran in the finals?
I mean, I kind of had a feeling that would happen. I thought, not like a sure thing I would beat Vanessa, but I thought if I beat Vanessa, I had a feeling I was going to face Kenny. It's kind of like one of those things where I had a feeling it was going to happen because we played a lot at Commerce together, and we were kind of like...
So you're familiar with Kenny?
Yeah, and he's like kind of the big live pro, and I'm the young online kid, and we played at Commerce together, and he kind of... They didn't dislike each other, but we just kind of... went at it against each other, Yeah, so we just would go at it against each other, play big pots, and kind of ego against each other a little bit. So when it got to heads up between us, I was just like, oh, this figures, right? And I mean, he turned out to be a really cool guy. I mean, we kind of only had a short term together at Commerce, and we kind of had the wrong idea about each other, but I ended up liking the guy. He's really cool. So.
Well, that's cool. So you actually had the chip lead in the first match at the beginning, right?
Yeah, I think for a little bit I did. I was like 3-2, and then he was 3-2, and then I think the second match I had the chip lead more of the match. The first match I got killed.
The first match, yeah, you got the last hand you were rivered, correct? You had the king 7 with the pair of 7s with the king kicker, and then Kenny got the 8.
Yeah, that hand that was tough too.
You both played the hand really passively, though. I mean, you both flopped a pair, and Kenny got 2 pair on the river, a better 2 pair. But why do you think you both held back a little bit on the hands?
I'd been playing really tight, like exceptionally tight the first match, and I looking back, I really didn't like how I played the first match. I told him that.
It seems like small ball poker. Just
and that's not the best way to play against Kenny, because he's just going to run me over in that aspect. So I knew I was playing bad after the match. Like I said, I looked back at the stats, and he won like over 65% of the pots, which is terrible in heads up, especially for my style. I shouldn't be letting him do that. Anyway, so the flop came like 7 high. He bet and I raised him, and I hadn't been raising him a lot at all. So I knew he had to put me on a somewhat decent hand. The turn paired the board, bringing a 6, so it was 7-6, 2-6.
Right.
And I thought he could have a 6 a lot, and I thought if I bet, he's going to fold better hands and just fold worse hands and call with better hands. So I didn't want to bet. I wanted to control the pot a little bit. The river came in 8, which was a bad card for me. He could have 8-9 for a straight draw, 8-5, or even a big hand and plan on check raising the river.
Yeah.
But he checked, and I decided to bet for value, which, looking back, I don't really even like it too much. And he took a while and called with 8-7, which was, he was definitely going to call me there. He had top 2 pairs, so it's an easy call for him. And I didn't like my bet looking back at it, especially with how the match was going. If I was bluffing a lot, it would be a good bet, because he could put me on a bluff. But I was so tight, he had to put me on a hand, and that's why it took him so long to call. So I don't think he was going to call me with worse.
And then the last hand of that match, you actually had the best hand pre-flop with the ace-jack going in. What do you think of Kenny's call with the ace-4?
I mean, it's marginal, to say the least. I think he knows that, too. I mean, he played great the whole time.
Yeah, he was willing to take it. The blinds are getting up at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that was his biggest mistake of the match. He played really solid other than that, and that was pretty marginal spot. It was unfortunate I got unlucky. I mean, if the flop came like, 9, 5, 6, he was just going to fold.
Right.
And I'm going to shove any flop, and of course, if an ace comes, he's going to lose all his money too. It's just it's a bad spot with ace-4, and that's poker. Sometimes you get unlucky and can't win them all.
It's true.
Yeah.
So the second match, you did have a nice chip lead for much of that.
Yeah,
Tell me about it.
I played a lot better the second match. I think he was getting.
What changes did you make?
Well, I saw after the first match, I talked to a lot of my friends who I really respect a lot, and they were watching and have an unbiased point of view at the game, so they could really analyze what was happening. And I talked to them, and they gave me a lot of pointers. And basically, one of them told me he won 68% of the pots, and I just realized
that just cut to the
exactly
bone.
That just said it all about the match. I was just playing too passively, and I just decided to open every single button and raise, and then bet every flop and apply pressure on him. And I check raised him a few times on bluffs. I think that 5s hand, I had the second match where I made a big bluff on the river.
You picked off some bluffs also.
I picked off some bluffs.
The one hand you called and he mucked.
Yeah, I just decided I wasn't going to let him run me over this match. And if I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose. But I'm going to put up a fight, and I'm going to make him win it. And it worked out really well for me. I had a good chip lead going. I felt like I was dominating the match.
You're getting paid off in your good hands.
Yeah,
the 10's full.
Things were going right for me. Yeah, and he was kind of confused. He was getting frustrated a few of the pots. And then the final hand came up, and I'd get it in with his hand too. I mean, he had a huge hand, I had a huge hand, and that's poker.
So you think the last, you think if the hands were reversed on the last hand, it would have played out kind of the same way?
I would have played his hand the same way. I don't know if he would have played mine the same way. I think he might have just check called me.
Because you got your money in good. You had a pair of 10s on the flop, right? Queen 10?
Not a pair of queens, but
pair of queens. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And he had a flush draw.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if he would have check raised me and got it in. But once I check raised him, I decided if he shoves it in or re-raises me, I'm going with my hand. I kind of made up my mind on the flop. If I check raise here, I'm going to get it all in no matter what.
Right.
I wasn't happy when he got it in against me, but I made my decision on the flop that I was just too short. And like I said, I got to apply pressure. I got to put moves on him. I've been raising him a lot, and I was hoping he'd get it in with a worse hand, maybe a draw like he had. I was hoping he didn't have an ace-high flush draw because his ace is live too. I was hoping maybe he had 9-10 of clubs or a smaller flush draw and just trying to bluff me off it. But he had a bigger hand, and that's that.
So coming away from the Heads Up tournament, what do you think of Kenny Tran's play?
It was good. It was really solid the whole time. The only hand was ace-4 was kind of questionable, and a few other small spots. And I made a lot of mistakes too. And
what would you change if you could go back and change one hand you played?
I don't know if there's really one hand I would change. I just think the first match I would just play more aggressively. I'd play how I played the second match. I think it would have gave me a lot better chance to win it. I think I might have came away with it because I think I would have had more chips going into the ace-jack hand, which would have forced him to fold. Or I wouldn't have lost all my chips because I would have had more. I could have just bet the flop, or he would have folded pre-flop or something. I could have got paid off more on certain spots. With a king-7, it would have been a different spot. And just redo the first match. But the second one I'm really happy with, and.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't be results-oriented all the time.
Exactly. So.
Well, thank you very much for coming up today.
Yep, no problem.
Talking to you.
You too. Thank you very much.
Lizzie Harrison with Alec Torelli for Card Players USA.